And they're from Cook, Flat, and Stroville, talking about a scope of services for, or just visit.
Just got a little handout here. Yeah, I appreciate having a little bit of time here. I know I think we stopped in a year or so ago, and Bruce stopped in since then. We just wanted to talk a little bit about Cook, Flat, and Stroville and their services we could provide the county. We've done this for several other counties that have had wind farms come to their county. And essentially the process normally is that whatever company is wanting to bring the wind farm in, they will submit proposed haul road routes. And they'll also submit the size of trucks they're planning to use, the wheel spacings of these trucks, the loadings on each individual axle. And then the county will need an engineering firm to take a look at bridges and culverts and that sort of thing on those haul roads and see if A, they can support the loads, or B, they need some modification or some sort of beefing up. One of the things we like to point out is on the bridge side of things, most counties have a pretty good handle on structures that are above 20 feet because you're required by KDOT to have those inspected every 2 years, and you've got packets on those, and if there's plans available, you have those plans for load rating calculations. But structures less than 20 feet, culverts, that kind of thing, most counties don't have a really good handle on that sort of thing, so that will need to be, looked at and measured and inspected and come up with some sort of, whether they can handle it as is, or maybe you have to add some fill to something, or temporarily shore or brace things, that kind of thing. And then of course there's the roadways itself, depending on whether it's a gravel road or an asphalt road. We generally would drive all those roads, inspect all those structures before the project starts, get a handle on what condition they're in, and then make sure that the things that we've recommended be done to the structures get done, and the roadways, and then of course at the end of the project make sure that nothing's been damaged, and the county has infrastructure that's usually the same or better, and it's usually better, because what ends up happening is you end up with structures that have been beefed up, to handle these heavy loads. I brought some of this stuff's proprietary, so I didn't really want to hand too much stuff out, but the loadings on these generators are very heavy, and they've got a lot of different axles, so it's a very specific load that you can't just use the existing 3-truck or 5-truck load ratings that you've got. You've got to check, each bridge for this particular, whatever particular trucks that they plan to use. You just like if you were moving a house, and you had to get a specific load rating for that particular truck or particular load. And generally, the way it's worked in the other counties is that the county essentially back bills the wind supplier, people that are wanting to do the work for your county engineer's work. So that's just kind of a quick summary. Bruce, anything you wanted to add to that, or?
No, we're local, I guess. We do have a local boy we hired, been with us for a year, a couple years now, I guess, and things, K-State graduate, Nemaha County resident, things. As you know, we're based out of Holton. I think we're totally capable of doing what you want done. One of our field inspectors, as well as Corbin Frank's the local boy, they know these people up here, they grew up in the area and things. So that should be a plus, getting along with people. Visiting with these guys out there, they thought that was a positive.
So whose proprietary information is this? Yours or Nextera's?
No, we haven't even talked to these guys. on projects we worked in the
Private
past.
projects in
You know,
Coffee.
L
now.
County, Coffee County, Montgomery
I
County.
see. Okay. Okay.
We've
I
got
was
stuff on the
confused.
trucks that that particular company used, but, you know, who knows what the company will be using here. But we can do as much or as little as you know, we work for you guys. So we do what, you know, we can make recommendations on, you know, what we think you need to have done. And we can do as little or as much as you want, so. We would be an extension of Nemaha County and we could, like in the past, when we went and inspected these haul roads, why the county and other counties, they would maybe have one of their guys come with us, you know, to kind of look at culverts and so they're kind of up on what's going on, and I mean, they don't have to do that, but that's certainly, because we're just an extension of your staff, essentially.
Do we have a scope of your services, or is that here?
Well, here's the thing, until we see, it's gonna vary depending on what sort of haul road. Really, it needs to start with a submittal from the wind farm people.
I see.
And they're saying, you know, if the haul roads are 30 miles or 20 miles or 10, you know, it's gonna vary depending on what that, so that would be our suggestion, and we get that submittal. And then you send that to us, and then we can put some sort of proposal together based on that.
We need that footprint.
Yeah. And in the past, sometimes, you know, we've done on a project, maybe these are the certain haul roads, and you get about 2/3 of the way, and then they maybe submit another haul road or something to add something, so it can vary and change. But that's the way it's happened in the past. Not with this company, but other wind farm companies. So.
Anything else, you guys?
I have a question. One thing we're gonna need is somebody here during the week, almost full-time,
Okay.
to ensure that the wind farm folks aren't taking routes that are not identified, because it's quicker for them to make sure that they're not using equipment that have not been identified. Somebody essentially to police what NextEra would be doing. Would you have somebody available here
Sure.
at all times to do that?
We'll do whatever you guys want us to do. If you want us to supply somebody full-time to watch that, we can. It's, you know, we've got 90-some people in our company, so, and we, you know, certified inspectors, and we have people local too, so.
Have you done that in the past, provided somebody
Yeah.
full-time to
We-
monitor a project?
In the past, you know, well, we do that on normal construction, like bridge and road construction. On wind farms that we've been dealing with, we normally haven't done that because, I don't know, people didn't want to pay for it, but yeah, I mean, we'll be glad to do it.
Right now, that'll start out, probably, because I'm contact liaison on it. When these guys have a pre-construction meeting, which I'm very sure they will have, any big operation done, we'll be there. And there will be routes handed out and things, and meet with these drivers and try to keep these guys honest. Anybody can make a mistake once, don't get me wrong on that, and I understand where you're coming from and things, but there will be that, and probably every month, I would say there'll be a safety meeting and a meeting with the powers to be, so that can all be reviewed on how things is going, and then if there needs to be any other meetings, I would request a special meeting by way of you guys, with people paying them. That's what I do, that's what I've done forever. I mean, we inspect these watershed dams. Occasionally, we have to load rate some bridges going in if we're hauling riprap in, to know whether we can use semis or just hand them axle trucks, different things like that. So we watch that pretty close. Not on the scale that these guys, but we can do it. I'm very confident we can do it.
Well, we have like 20 certified inspectors from KDOT that do this kind of construction inspection on road and bridges on the state level all the time. So, not that the inspector would necessarily have to be KDOT certified, but most of our inspectors are. So, and we've got, I think we listed on the bridge side of things that we do the, you know, the biennial bridge inspection, the load rating for this sort of thing. So, you know, you're basically gonna have to take that truck and check your bridges to make sure that the load can, you know, and if it can't, you know, then you may have to look at alternative route or, like I say, some kind of beefing up of structures. I don't know how much work these guys have put into looking at that yet for their haul roads, but I think, you know, from the county's perspective, we're looking at your best interest. You know, I think you'd want somebody running the calcs and then having them pay for it.
Well, the main thing, we don't want to have, like, one of our county employees have to be down there.
Right.
And be the in-between person,
Yeah,
and
no.
that shouldn't happen, because,
We'll cover that.
Yeah.
and that's the main thing, as long as we got a go-to guy.
Right.
If we get complaints, you got somebody that can be there immediately to help them.
We'd be glad to supply somebody full-time if that's what you want.
And I understand, you know, there's gonna be times when, if you got local drivers involved, they're gonna say, well, I can cut across here 3 miles
Yeah.
instead of driving 8 miles around.
Yeah.
Well, you know, they'll understand how that, most of that, they'll abide by it and do that. But, yeah, I'd say you need to get with, between James and NextEra and see what their scope, and if they're satisfied, you know, that'd be it.
Once we get the footprint, we know a haul route and that type of thing, maybe we ought to talk again.
Okay, sounds good.
But your fee would probably base on the scope.
Right.
You know, that's and until we get that, we ain't got any idea, which most of the time, you're gonna be working, my understanding would be for the county,
Right. All the time.
and,
Yeah.
and the majority of our fees, your fees or whatever, would be reimbursed by NextEra, my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, that's the agreement you need to have with them.
And because they're really working for, you know, you guys are doing them more favor than anybody, but that's.
Well, I think it's best that we work directly for you guys, because we're looking out for your best interests, so.
Okay,
I think
very good.
that's- And then you get reimbursed from these guys.
Thank you for taking time and coming on.
Appreciate it.
Okay,
Nice to meet you.
keep in touch.
All right, we will.
So there's no more room in the inn here. The courtroom is open till 11.
No more room there.
Got 2 seats.
I can see that. No, it's fine. Would you like to sit?
Are we okay? Who else is out there, Ed? Is there several other?
This one right here.
Yeah, okay.
Here, we can sit up here, some of us, and free up a couple chairs.
We had a,
He's grabbing a chair. There we go.
Here.
got
I'm fine.
party of two, right here.
We got 2 chairs, right?
One question about,
That way when somebody else
the
comes,
gentleman
we
said,
can see that one.
was it, now the township gonna be responsible for incurring part of that cost and being reimbursed, or the county gonna take care of all that?
Cost for
The,
engineering firm?
Yes,
No,
yes.
no, it'll be with the county.
that'll be the county.
The county will be taking care of that, and they're really, as far as road maintenance and that, should all be taken care of by NextEra if there's needed, you know. I don't think the townships, am I wrong, Spencer, that the townships really should not have any cost incurred
No, no.
with any of the and that part of it.
Correct.
And then we're gonna have a road maintenance agreement after that.
We may need to sit down with all the township officials that are involved. That way everybody's on the same page.
That's a good idea.
So, just, Mr. Neeld is here, represents us, just to preface anything else, he is in negotiations with NextEra on several different issues, none of which we can discuss yet in an open public meeting. That will happen at some point in time. And I guess I could open the floor to any questions that anyone might have for Mr. Neeld or Brad.
Well,
Or
Yeah.
make a,
yeah, what I can do is I can give a general update and tell you where we're at, and at least give you my thoughts on timing. That may change. So the commissioner and I and the county attorney have met several times. We've presented terms to NextEra. I'm sure we will get a response on those, and then when we have a document that either A, we believe is something that the county is willing to put forward to the citizens for review, or B, we have it as close as we can get it, yet we're still apart on some things. The goal is to present it to the public for at least a week in advance. Then we'll have a meeting. It'll be an open forum for public discussion on that term sheet. And then after that, then we'll take it to a vote. So once again, the process is the same we originally discussed. We're going to get it as close as we can get it to whatever deal we believe is something we would present. That'll be out to the public. It'll be open for public debate at a meeting. Everyone pack their lunches. I'm sure we'll be here for a while for that one. And then we'll take it to a vote afterwards. I will tell you in generality about the terms. The terms include things such as setbacks, decibel levels, flicker rates. It also includes concepts where certain areas are excluded. It includes concepts of reimbursement, for example, for professional fees. That'd be my fee and the engineering fees. Concepts involving a method by which the citizens can make claims and how those claims are logged and presented to the county so that the citizens of the county can view those logs and see where complaints have been filed, and also that there is insurance or some method by which those claims can be satisfied. And finally, obviously, the end of the life of the project and how the project is removed from the county at the end of its life. Now, that's just a general broad statement of the contents of those term sheets. How that comes together specifically is what we're negotiating. Some or all those terms may remain. Some of the terms that we presented may change. Probably they will change. But that's the update and the process. We have, from a county side, 2 action items that we owe NextEra. One is the exact amount that the county's requesting for payments in lieu of taxes or whatever tax agreement we're going to come to. We're not yet ready to present that. We are still running calculations and seeking input and advice from other counties that have gone through this. The second thing we owe to NextEra is an engineering company that we're willing to engage so that they can start coordinating with them on the haul route and stuff that you saw a moment ago. From NextEra, we're waiting on 2 things. One is the footprint, and number 2 is a density study, and we hope to get those really soon. That's the general update. I guess I'll open it up for questions now with your permission.
yes, sir. Questions and or comments?
Mr. Neeld, can you explain what a density study is, please?
Sure. So what affects setbacks quite a bit is how close people live together, right? So you'll have a lot of density in a city, right? Whereas you get out to the more rural areas, you'll have less density, how closely people live next to one another. The setbacks are calculated, or the way we presented that they be calculated is from a residential home is one setback, from a commercial business is another setback. And then also we have a property line setback, and we have setbacks for roads that are public roads. So if you can see the density of an area, you can see how those setbacks can affect the project. In some areas, the setback's somewhat immaterial because people live so far apart, right? In other areas, it gets more impactful because people live closer together. So a density study allows you to put in perspective what a setback really means to the project, and will allow both NextEra and us to look at areas and go, okay, we don't really have a problem here with a larger setback because frankly people just don't live that close together. Whereas up here people live really close together, so can we move the project away from that area to comply with the setbacks? Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank
Sure.
you.
Other questions?
Can you go over the timeline again of what's gonna happen and how quick? It seems like there's a lot of stuff that's gonna happen, and then when you guys finally propose the contract, the public has a very, very, very short amount of time to refute anything that they feel like they're concerned about. A lot of people in the county don't have a clue what's going on here, and the ones that do think that it doesn't affect them. And, you know, the last couple of meetings, I've heard you guys say that not very many people are saying anything, so we don't think that it's a big issue. And I say that for every one person that contacts you and says something, there's many that are behind them that will never say a word or are scared to say a word for retaliation or whatever, whether it's a business or whatever. Just seems like it's a very tight timeline. Could you go over that again?
Sure. So let's begin with a couple concepts. Concept number one is we want to present the term sheet to the public. Okay, that will happen. And concept number two is there's going to be an open forum for public debate. Right. Now, in my mind, it was 1 week of public debate and 1 week to vote. What the commission sets for the time period is really up to them, as long as the core concepts are honored. One is the presentation and the public debate. If the commissioners, based on input, like you just said, go, you know, we need 2 weeks, 3 weeks to make sure the public knows about it, and we have 2 or 3 meetings to debate it, that's certainly fine. And that may be necessary. One of the things we've put in the term sheet is that we've asked NextEra to help us get the word out for that public meeting when it's debated, through social media and through some mailings, so that we try to capture as many citizens as we can. Because the idea is, we get the term sheet out, we want all the input we can get. Because at some point it's got to go to a vote, you got to make a decision, and the commissioners need all the input they can get to make the most informed decision they can. So when I say 1 week, those are my words. I should have said the concept of public debate as opposed to the time period. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah.
One question I have, and that's for Spencer, that I get a lot of questions about who's getting the power off of these windmills. Is any of it going to benefit any of Nemaha County? Is there any benefit for us here, or is it just for the state of Kansas, or is it going to Rhode Island?
No, so it's staying in Kansas. It is, the off-taker is Westar, and they've used the power to sell power back to, for instance, K-State, Washburn, KU as well, City of Wichita, City of Manhattan, places like that, as well as other companies that are moving into Kansas and are able to buy the power from Westar. That's an incentive for people to kind of move their operations to the state.
Will you guarantee that?
Though that's
will you guarantee that in writing?
actually, well, I don't. It's been released to the public. So K-State released a press release.
But you don't have a contract.
Oh, no. We have a contract with Westar. We do.
Once it's on the grid, it's on the grid. That's what you're,
It's
I mean,
irrelevant.
where's the power exactly going?
I do have one question.
To me, it's a publicity thing. They pulled K-State, KU, Washburn, you know, and that's fine. That's their business, but, what power goes where, it's on the grid.
Once you sign that contract with Westar, do you have any control, or does that contract designate where the power goes?
So it does. That contract means it has to go on Westar's system. And then Westar, it's up to them to sell the power beyond that.
As a public utility.
Correct.
Has Westar purchased all of the power that would come from this project?
Yes.
I have a question for Mr.
Saw a hand, yes.
NextEra is actually courteous enough to come and be talking to us right now, but do our commissioners need to be taking action to prevent other companies from just coming in and going? Where are we at as far as protections from, and even for that matter, from NextEra outside of their original footprint?
Yeah, so I think I'll deal with that in 3 responses. Number one, from my review and people I know in the industry, NextEra is a very good company. They're a good public-private citizen. Now that's personally my personal opinion. They're a good company to work with on a wind farm because they show up, they make themselves available, and that's just common sense. You guys can all feel that. You may disagree with some of the things they say or what they're trying to do, but them standing up here talking to you is a good thing. Some people won't do that, right? Now, the question of can you prevent other people from coming in? The answer is no, unless it affects the health, safety, and welfare of your citizens. Nemaha County does not have zoning laws, so you don't have a law that would prohibit, for example, someone wanting to put a structure on your property that would, a water windmill, for example, to pull water up, a water tower. And that's a decision that's not uncommon in rural areas. I grew up in rural Oklahoma. Last thing we wanted was zoning laws where I live, right? And I'm sure some citizens are that way. But the point is, you don't have zoning laws to, by law, prohibit that unless it affects the health, safety, and welfare. Now, things that do affect the health, safety, and welfare, which can stop a company, a wind farm company, that just wanted to try and sneak in here and put up some items, is they still have to use your roads, your bridges, right? They still have to, they're putting an improvement up that has a life, an end life to it, and it has big batteries in it that can leak if it's not properly taken care of. That's the method by which you can stop people or regulate people from coming in. Now, one action item that the commissioners asked that I take is there was a company in Brown County that did some work. I, at the direction of the commissioners, sent a letter to that company and asked that they coordinate with our commissioners before they try and do that in our county. Now, whether they abide with that or not, I don't know. My initial feedback is that they would. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat.
Well, let's dive into the somewhat aspect. Can we stop them? No, you don't have zoning laws. You can, however, stop them if it affects the health, safety, and welfare. And one of the ways you can prohibit the activity is to regulate how they use your roads, or if they're doing something that can hurt people. Does that make sense?
So we do have the ability to put some form of regulation and constraints on them.
You can pass a law if the county decides to pass a law that would regulate, much like a zoning law, for improvements, right? That would have to go through a political process. There's a statutory process that you go through to enact a law. That would have to be presented and read twice, public debate on it, then a vote on that law. That does not exist right now. So it's not like we could have a law in place by next week to regulate what's going on right now. Right? We can put a law in place in the future which can regulate this type of stuff in the future. Does that make sense?
At the local level, that can be done if it's done properly?
That's correct. There's a statutory method that you have to go through to pass a law. And also, the law can't discriminate against one industry over another. So you can't say, well, I don't want XYZ company coming in here and doing this, so I'm going to pass a law directed right at that company. You can't do that. But what you can do is you can regulate types of industry, you know, wind industry, oil and gas, ranching, farming. You can do that. Now, whether it's smart or the public wants it, that's a different question.
Is it too late once they've already started that process? If they've already, once the companies have already started, when is that too late?
Right. Your laws will pass going forward, not looking back. Does that make sense? So if, for example, someone has signed up a bunch of leases, right, yet they haven't broken ground, you could regulate them going forward, but that company might have claims against the county for what's called negative condemnation, a taking. And that claim would probably be successful, in my opinion. So that's something you have to consider when you pass these laws, where a company is to when they're coming into the county.
So time is really of the essence.
If you want it to be. Once again, that's a public process. No one can wave a wand and get past the statutory requirements. And also, at least in my experience, getting zoning laws passed in communities that are primarily ag or ranch usually meet with a lot of opposition. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, I'm just saying it is.
Last night at the meeting, they pointed out that the gizmo up there has got 400 gallons of cooling fluid. Should there be a retention ring around the bottom of that to the EPA standards?
I have not seen the schematics for this process, for these engines yet, so I don't know.
They showed a picture of lightning hitting one, and then the energized, you know, it was like a fireball coming down to the ground, and that was the fluid on fire.
I will say what we do have in is a method. If you approve this project and approve the terms, we have a method by which if something is harmed because of this, there is insurance in place to cover it, and a method by which you can make claims. Right?
That also covers the decommission of these also?
We've asked in our term sheet that there be a thing put in place that gives us comfort that there's enough money to take them down when the life is over. Now, once again, this is our presentation. We haven't finished our negotiations, so I don't know where that will end up, but we've certainly made that request. And I would view that as a normal and customary request, that give us assurance that you can remove these at the end of their life and that you're going to have enough money to do it. Does that answer your question?
Did it have to be a bond or something to make sure that money was there then?
That's correct. There's a lot of different ways you can do that, but a bond is one of them.
Up to 90 years, they said.
It depends on the life of the project. Usually wind farms have a lot less life than 90 years.
They could always come along and put a different gizmo on top.
Well, I think it's important to pick when the life of the project will end, right? And either one or two things happen. Either they go away, you got to take them down, or you got to come back to the county and go, I want to extend the life of this project, and here are the new terms of this extension. Does that make sense?
Yeah, somewhat.
And then the county would, again, negotiate all, I mean, we wouldn't just be given the new terms, we would, again, negotiate.
That's what we're proposing, is that this project has an end of the life, right? And here's our business agreement for that period of time. And then at the end of the life of that project, you got to get everything out. If you want to extend that, you got to come back and cut a new deal. Now, once again, that's what we've presented. We don't know how they will come back, and I don't know how that will end up.
Where is the EPA on this plan of putting holes in the ground where the water table, some places are fairly shallow and they're going to mess up people's water supplies?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question.
Would you explain the county's obligation to protect the public's safety, health, and well-being?
And the county has an obligation to protect the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens to the best of their ability. That is the obligation. It's rather vague, and it's intentionally vague and broad. That gives the county the power to regulate things that they believe are dangerous to their citizens or that affect the welfare.
Well, there's many hundreds of studies out there on how windmills are damaging to your health, public's health. So isn't it their obligation to protect us from these things?
Well, I think it's your obligation, if you believe those exist and you have evidence of those, that you present them to the county so that they can include those in their decision making. Right now, that is the input they need is from you and the public. If you think it's dangerous, you need to submit it to the commissioner so that they can review that.
Well, there's many studies out there that show the hazards of these things to public health, and also documentaries and stuff from people who live by them, how it's affected their health. So it's overwhelming evidence out there that these things are not good to live by. So I think it's the county's obligation to protect us from them.
Well, once again, get that information, submit it to the commissioners. If they're not submitted to the commissioners, right, if you feel strongly about it, obviously you do, you need to submit it to the commissioners. And also, I would encourage you to submit it to NextEra and hand it to them and see what response or input they have on that. Because when you send it to the commissioners, what we do, or certainly I do, is if we have a concern, we believe that concern is valid, we submit it to NextEra and want their response from it. Right? And obviously during the public debate portion after the term sheet, stand up and raise that issue. Certainly will allow, I'm sure the commissioners will allow that discussion to take place, and I'm sure NextEra would like to respond to that. And the good thing about the public process is open debate. So you can hear their response at the same time you have your response.
And will we have that debate before you give any offer to NextEra?
Pardon me?
Will we have that public debate before you offer anything to NextEra?
Well, we have a term sheet out. The term sheet is absolutely subject to both the public debate and the commissioner's final vote. All I'm trying to do is get it in a framework of what would be something that is reasonable to present to the public. Frankly, the public may show up and go, we don't want them at all. Now, I think that would be a bit of a challenge legally, but you as the public have the right to do that and present that to the commissioners. So when you say authorization, we're obviously presenting terms to NextEra. And my job is to get it to a place where we can present to the public. And then we'll have open discussion on it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You bet.
The term sheet, excuse me, the term sheet you said is not out for public information.
Pardon me?
The term sheet you're speaking of is not open for public inspection or anything.
No, not right now. That's correct.
It will be, not yet.
Yeah, but then the time frame becomes, it appears to me right now that the public has little input to this.
Actually, the public will have all the input to it.
But only about a 2 or 3 week window.
Well, you will get both the term sheet. You'll be able to review it and make comments. If you want more time than 2 or 3 weeks, right, I think that's something you should talk to the commissioners about. The best thing you can do as a public right now is, how much time do you want to review it and comment on it? At some point you got to cut it off, right? A reasonable person, the term sheet's only 3 pages long, right? It's kind of in bullet points. And then that term sheet has to turn into contracts as well. So there's going to be a time period between the term sheet and drafting the contracts. But certainly if you believe you need 3 weeks or a month, you should submit that to the commissioners. Right? The idea is not to give you 2 days to look at it, or if 2 weeks is enough. The idea is that at some point you got to get something in writing that everyone can talk about it. Right now everyone's talking about a lot of different things. But if we can get it down to within a lane of a discussion point, then you can have some meaningful public debate on it.
How, once this term sheet's available, do we have any idea how we're gonna give people notice that it's available and get them a copy if they want a copy? Have you guys thought about that at all?
Well, what we've put in the term sheet also is that we've asked NextEra to help us disseminate this to the public for the public discussion. Okay. And the methods we're doing is anyone that lives within the radius of where these might go is we've asked NextEra to help us deliver to them written notice of the public hearing, and also we've asked them to help disseminate it on public media, social media. And then of course the county will have its own process through its, however you guys would normally disseminate information.
Public hearing and so forth.
That's correct.
So on that note, Spencer, is it accurate that NextEra currently has active leases in 18 of the 20 townships in the county?
I can't confirm.
I believe that's what the Register of Deeds report records. So does that mean that everybody in the county will get notice?
I think the radius, and please correct me if I'm wrong, has to do with the actual footprint and our proposed turbine locations.
That's correct. Okay. So the requirement I've asked NextEra to take on is a radius around every one of the turbines, as opposed to where they have proposed leases. Now I will say I don't have their footprint, so I don't know all the townships that encompasses. Does that answer your question, at least on that aspect?
Well, my concern, and several in this room, and I think you commissioners too, we talk about a footprint, but it's a moving target. And therefore the project must be a moving target until we see something a little more substantial. So,
well, yeah, right. And so let me direct that on the term sheet we have. We want their footprint and lock them into that footprint. And we've also anticipate from that footprint putting in zones where they simply can't put turbines. Right? And that'll allow us easier. It'll become easier to do that once we get their footprint. We just don't have it yet. And I will say, everyone's coming back from the holidays, so I don't mean to say we're waiting on them as if that's a negative thing. Certainly, everyone wants to spend Christmas and New Year's with their families, right? So let's give them a little bit of time.
So once we have their footprint, then we can step forward and go with that. I mean, you're next in line. I mean, we have to have the footprint before we.
That's right. Before I would present a term sheet to the commissioners to approve, to dissemination, to start it, the discussion, we want to have their footprint, we want to have the exclusionary zone so public can look at, here's the project, here's the setbacks, here's the density study. so you can see how it affects the community at large, and you can give your public opinion on that.
What type of setbacks are we looking at for non-participating farmers from our homes?
Don't know how that will turn out, but I promise you, when we get that into a term sheet form, we'll disseminate it. I just don't know yet. Very early in those negotiations. We're asking for a lot. I'm sure they're going to ask for less, and it'll come to some number that, or we just can't get there, and we want to stop it and get it out to the public, and we would just tell you we couldn't come to an agreement on this. And by agreement, that's subject to the vote, obviously. And we would tell you, here's where we're at, and here's where they're at. So we're opening this up for public debate, and we want to hear your opinions.
How about also, if you don't lease your property for them to go across to their power lines and stuff, can they just go down the grader ditch or down the road or wherever else they want, since they can't go across your property to get to this?
Well, as long as they have a legal right to get where they need to go, they can do that. And I know that's a vague answer, but I'll give you an example. If you don't want to sign a lease, yet your property's bounded by a public road and there's a public right-of-way, they could negotiate and get an easement or a lease to go on that public right-of-way or that public road. Sure, they could.
From the county or the township?
That's correct. Someone would have to grant them that right, whether it be you as an individual or whomever has the right to grant that right. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
You made the comment that it's our responsibility to bring it up to the commission about our views and things that we've heard. I feel like we elected, I know all three of these gentlemen very well. They hired a very high-powered attorney to come in and speak and help them make those decisions. You guys ought to be telling us, we don't want this for this reason here, and I'm surprised that one of the discussions is we don't want it at all.
Actually, that can be absolutely part of the discussion. My role is to get it to something to present to the public to discuss. And part of that discussion is we don't want you at all. And as part of that, someone's going to ask me, well, James, can we really stop this? And after I get through this process, I'll be able to give you an opinion on that. I'm not there yet. With regards to what the commissioner's responsibility is, absolutely, they're looking at things and whether or not this is the right decision for the public. My point to you was not that you take on the obligation to protect yourselves. My point is if you have a concern, make sure it gets to the commissioner so that they can consider it. And if a study's out there, or for example, laws like the EPA regulations, that's stuff I know. But if you have a study from some wind farm in South Dakota that said X, Y, Z, and it concerns you, you need to send it to us. We're not all knowing.
Sure, my concern is though, is that there's so much information out there, some of it's not valid.
Fair point.
And some people are making decisions based off of information that's not accurate. But there's a lot of accurate information. Somebody needs to be disseminating what that is and sharing it with us. And I would hope that our decisions are being made based off of that, because besides the people that don't know what's going on, some of them, what they do know is not accurate.
Sure.
And, you know, it's going to create a real divide, I'm afraid, because there's so much secrecy, and I realize you got to have contracts. Somebody needs to be talking to these people and telling them what's going on and sharing with them what's coming down the pipe, even though it may not be specific to that contract. There's going to be an upheaval if this thing is just crammed down everybody's throat and a decision's made and said, that's all we could do.
Well, what I can say is this, is certainly no one's intention, nor have I been given any direction to do anything that would cram down anything.
No, I'm not implying that.
No, that's okay, but I like talking just bluntly.
Sure.
I'm not sure, and I would be absolutely open if you think we can do it differently. I'm sure the commissioners would as well. I don't know how better we can do it, other than to take all the information we can, reduce it down to a term sheet, right? So we have a bite-sized thing to digest, either say yes or no to. If we say yes to, then you can go through the terms of it and present it to the public. And then give a period of time to have debate about it. And then not only we use our resources to inform the public, hey, this is out there and we're going to talk about it these days. Plus, we're asking NextEra, and once again, they haven't agreed to this. I suspect they will, but they haven't agreed to it yet, to help us disseminate that information. Honestly, I just don't know how better we can do. And if you can think of a better thing we can do, please come tell me. I'll be hanging out here for a little bit.
Mr. Neeld, quick question. I know you gave us kind of a thumbnail sketch.
One question here.
Oh.
Go ahead, Galen.
There's about a dozen of us standing out here in the hall that can hear about half.
Come in behind us.
We can stand, we can squish.
Come in behind us here.
Grab a seat right there. I'll stand up right back here.
I'd prefer to stand in the corner. I feel more
Come back in here. There's a lot of room back here.
Yes, absolutely.
That's it. There's room back
Sarah, right here. Yes. You think slow down?
They don't want to be behind.
Nope.
We can back up and move the table back.
Yeah.
We're getting closer. We are.
Yeah, right.
That might not be a good thing.
We like it.
Come on up. Come on up. Get ready.
Might have to go a little pressure in here. At least today we could. I think it's one.
Window right there. Might have to. No, I got my coat off.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see, Chair recognized Galen, I think, is
My
that correct?
question, you had given us kind of a thumbnail sketch of the term sheet. In that, is there anything regarding potential decline in residential property value or any other property value declines?
With regard to how much NextEra would pay for a lease, I'll handle this in two ways. The county doesn't get involved with that as to how a lease might be valued or if.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm non-participant that gets a turbine put up close to their home, the property value to their, that's what I'm after, in case I wasn't clear.
Sure. So we have a proposed setback, number one, and we also have a proposed setback from a property line, which may increase the original setback. We've also allowed for if NextEra would like to get closer, or if there's a particular complaint, so we'll handle it two ways. One is the upfront. If they want to get closer, they can go cut whatever deal they want with that non-participating landowner, if the non-participating landowner decides to participate. I'm saying participating too much. If decides to go along with that, right? The other thing we've included is a claims process. So even if they are within the setback range, and assuming that setback range is accepted, then there would be a process by which you can make a claim, and then that claim would be handled by NextEra, ideally person to person first, and would not go above that unless that could not be resolved. There's also some protections such as flicker rate requirements regardless of the setback and decibel levels regardless of the setback. Does that answer your question?
Well, I think it's been stated, and I think it's probably pretty accurate, that we all know that a wind turbine within some distance, let's just say a half a mile, just for fun. That's not going to add value to any of our homes.
Exactly.
So my point is, if I'm a non-participant and I've probably lost value, and I decide I need to sell my house and move away, or let's more importantly, a young couple who recently bought their tract of land, 5 acres in the country. They put their dream home on it. They scraped up the down payment, and their lender, local lender, provided the rest. And houses are not cheap to build here. That's just a true fact. So they've got that in it. Well, now, let's say they do decide to move away for whatever reason, they've got to sell that home. But that home has gone down in value by some percentage. Where does that come back from? How do they recover that?
Sure. So if a wind turbine is otherwise properly, well, let's make a couple assumptions.
Okay.
We agree upon some terms and we agree upon certain setbacks. If that happens and the company otherwise complies with that, they're not required to pay anybody.
Okay.
Now, if they are in violation of that, or if they want to go outside of those setbacks, either a claim's made, right, and we have both a requirement that they have insurance to cover that claim if they can't handle it informally, or B, they have to come to an agreement with that landowner to otherwise violate that setback. But if they're otherwise in compliance, there would be no requirement on NextEra to make any payment for that.
So then, okay, that makes good sense. So the citizens of this county have to make certain that the setbacks that are hopefully voted on, if they are far enough away from their homes that they won't devalue. That's their protection.
Well, that's their protection, yes, absolutely. Is, you know, if to the extent that's a concern of a citizen, I'm sure it is, right? That citizen with that concern should focus more on the setbacks. That would be their biggest issue, right?
Thank you.
You bet.
And how do you decide ahead of time what is a safe setback? Because there's different studies, and I mean, it's not just things flying off the turbines, which can happen, ice pieces and whatever, and if they're not back far enough, which from what I've read is farther than what they're proposing on a lot of this, from scientific calculations from engineers and stuff. And how about the infrasound that's so bad for like 25% of the people that live in the area? How do you know until those turbines go up whether that infrasound is traveling to your house and it goes through your walls? Because that's what the studies show, it travels through your walls. It's worse inside your house than outside your house. And you can't live there anymore because it makes you so dizzy, you can't sleep at night, you're nauseous, whatever, and you gotta leave your home where, you know, you've got all your investment. Well, if you've gotta leave it, who else is gonna wanna buy it? And you know, how do you decide on this?
Well, what you have to do, at least from my perspective, and what I'm trying to do, is you put an objective measure on the things that you know are potentially out there, legitimately out there. Some people can come up with crazy scenarios that just are never going to come into play. But noise is certainly out there, lots of studies on noise. So what we've asked in our term sheet is that the noise level has to be below a certain threshold for both participating landowners and non-participating landowners. We believe we have made a good proposal. I'm sure NextEra will come back with something. But when you get the term sheet for the public debate, you can research that decibel level and you can bring more information to the table, whether you agree with it or not. As far as the dizziness usually caused by the flicker rate, the shadow where the sun's behind
Well,
it.
they say the infrasound
Yeah.
causes a lot of that too, and you can't hear it. It's not audible,
Yeah,
but your ears detect it.
Sure. Well, and as you age, your ability to hear certain levels goes up or down. So a common denominator on that is a simple decibel rate. Now, if anybody has a different method to measure sound that they would like to see me incorporate, I would love to see it. What I've seen from these transactions before is a decibel rate measure. But to answer your question, I'm trying to come up with an objective measure to say this is good, this is bad. And at some point you got to draw a line there because you can't make it so vague to where it's not enforceable. I got to have something that says good, not good. Now, I think we've taken a good stab at it, but certainly any ideas the public has on that, please give it to the commissioners. Substantive information that goes to the commissioners that has an effect on the term sheet comes to me. So I would love to see it.
So when you're talking about decibel levels, that's I'm not sure if I understand this correctly, but that's sound that we can hear, correct?
Some people can. For example, as you get older, your range is going to go down, whereas my daughters can hear a lot better than I can, right?
I wasn't, am I wrong in asking whether that infrasound or the that she's referring to, is that something that's measurable in decibels?
I understand it is. If somebody has different information on that, I would love to hear that.
Another quick question. You referred to crazy ideas earlier in the conversation. You probably aren't at the point that you can elaborate as to what you consider crazy or not.
No, and listen, and I don't know who was here first time I introduced myself. I mean, you know, I grew up on a ranch in Oklahoma in a rural place, so I can tell you, crazy to me may be different to other people.
I was just curious, and I
Yeah.
think that applies to me as well.
No, I'm sure some of y'all think some of my stuff is crazy. That's okay. The point is that we try to get something to the public that we can meaningfully debate. Right now, we're going over scenarios that are good scenarios. But just need some time to get it to a point where we can really talk meat and potatoes. And part of that meat and potatoes is, do we want it at all? You know, and I think that's an important thing to discuss. I think there are challenges with that, legal challenges, and I'm happy to discuss that at the right time.
That's the next question I had. So if the public decides...
Can I interrupt you just a moment?
sorry.
This lady's had her hand up a couple of times. You just couldn't see her, so I want to make sure.
Isn't it too late to decide if we want this at all or not? I mean,
Well, yeah, so let's put that in context a bit. The county doesn't have zoning laws, so if a company wants to come in here and put up a windmill on someone's private land, and it doesn't hurt anybody or affect anybody, they could do that. There's not a darn thing we can do about it. It's just like if you want to raise a barn on your home right now. If you're not hurting anybody else, you just can't do anything about it. Once you start putting a lot of them together and start moving on the roads and stuff, well, okay, now we can regulate it. Even though we don't have zoning laws, we can regulate it. So the answer is, you know, can we stop it? I don't have a full opinion on that yet. But I do know what we can do is we can certainly regulate how they use the public components of the county. Now, by virtue of being able to do that, and the fact, in my opinion, NextEra is a good citizen. They want to cut a business deal with the county so that we get the opportunity to regulate more than we would otherwise be able to regulate. We have the opportunity to enter into a contract with them so that we can regulate them through that contractual agreement. So the direct answer is, yes, we can regulate them to the extent they use the public aspects or something they do is harmful to you. If they don't, then the answer is no. So if they go out on someone's land and put up one turbine and it's not close to anybody, that'd be very hard to regulate. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat. I guess my perception is that if these leases are signed, then they've got to go through, right? And as I understand, most of the leases, they're about done at signing leases, as I understand. So even if we do, there's not much left to lease, is there? So what good will it do if it doesn't go through? Because it's the bulk of it's already going to go through, is that right, as I understand it?
Well, I don't know that that's accurate. So I'll separate the public component from the private component. NextEra has or is signing leases with private individuals. That's a private agreement between those individuals and NextEra. As long as they don't affect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Nemaha County or otherwise don't break the law, they can do whatever they want pursuant to that private agreement.
But we're establishing that they could affect the health and safety of the people, especially non-participating people.
And that's why the commissioners are involved, and that's why we are negotiating, right, some terms to protect the citizens and also to get payment for the windmills being in place in Nemaha County, a payment in lieu of taxes.
It's not reduction in property values for a non-participating person welfare?
Yeah, I don't know that that's the case, but I'm not sure I'm in a position to answer that definitively.
What if we find out down the road that we didn't have the setback far enough and it is hurting individuals who live there, non-participating members, and they are having health effects? What do you do at that time?
Don't know. That's a hypothetical. I can't look into the future. And I'm not trying to dodge the question. I just don't know.
Years ago, a lot of years ago, we put a wind turbine up on our land.
Mm-hmm. A private one?
Of course, it was a little tiny baby one compared to what they have now.
Generating electricity or pulling water up?
Electricity.
Yeah. For your
Although there was no way to store that. And so whether we ever actually made money off of it, you know, to save money to, you know, through the electricity, I don't know. What ended up happening was that the ice built up on it because wind turbines work in a constant wind, and Kansas has gusty wind.
Sure.
And so most of the time we were shutting it down because we were in gusty wind. And so what ended up happening was that the ice built up on it one winter, and it basically self-destructed.
Sure.
And so it wasn't in our power to go out there and get the ice off of it. But it was small enough that it was only on our land. It didn't even go out to the road. So we talked with K-State and said, well, how can we make this better? And they said, you can't, because in Kansas there's not enough, you don't have the right kind of wind. You don't have a constant wind. You need a constant wind. In Kansas there's gusty winds. So in my mind I thought, well, great, we're not going to have wind farms in Kansas. And now all of a sudden we have wind farms in Kansas, but we have gusty wind. Well, the solution is to make them taller and taller and taller and taller so that so now it doesn't just affect my little wind turbine, didn't affect anybody except us. Now the wind turbines are going to be so high that a long ways away it's still going to affect me, and I don't want one. Also, and I don't want anyone anywhere near close. I have servicemen that go out and work on farms all the time, and he was telling me the other day he was out over towards Marysville, and he said he was about a mile away from from the wind turbines, and he said he heard this noise, he got to looking around, and he realized the noise was like a jet coming from this turbine. I said, well, how far was it? He said, well, it was at least a mile away. Well, I don't want it. I don't want to hear it, because I sit on my patio about 300 days of the year. I don't want the flicker from it. I don't want the ground vibration from it. I don't want it affecting my dog or my cat or my horse.
Sure.
And so I'm saying that to say, then the county commissioners, I was very disappointed in them in the past couple of years, because I have a new road. Well, not a new road, but a new surface on the road that goes right by my house, and it's a crap road. Sorry. It looks bad. The shoulders are bad. I don't really want to test the shoulders, but if you got off in it, you'd probably have that. The sandbags from the company are still left there. This winter, when it started raining, my road was, I couldn't get onto my road because it was so flooded because of all the sand and crap that was left in the ditches. So I had to have the guys come out and dig a hole so that I could get through, because my ground was flooded, my road was flooded right off the county road. So I'm a little disappointed in the commissioners and their ability to, sorry guys, to select the best companies to do the best job, because that road has never looked like that before. But it doesn't look good, does it? The road that goes by my house. So I think that they need to do a little more research on their own, not pick the cheapest company, because I understood that's what happened. And I think I mentioned all my points, so my last point is I'm behind the game in this, but I want to know, where does the money come from? If there's no tax revenue coming from these companies, because they don't have to pay taxes, right?
Just on this first?
Never. I mean, state, okay. So where does the money come from? Well, if my township doesn't have to pay for the betterment of a road or a bridge so that they can haul this stuff, but the county does, well, that's still my taxes that are going to pay for that. So where is the money coming from to pay for that, to pay for the roads, to pay for the bridges, to pay for them maybe making a path across my land that I don't want there, to pay for the insurance for the people who are going to be affected by it? Where's all that coming from? Because I bet it's not going to, I mean, I don't know. Where's it coming from?
Well, let me hit some of those. If I miss any, cover me.
I don't,
You've been holding that in for, the whole meeting. So I'll hit some of the easier one. I'll try and get through all of them. If I miss any, just back me up. So on the money side, first off, let me begin with this. Well, if the citizens decide that they would like this to be approved and the commissioners approve it, it's not going to be perfect. You know, I mean, it's just not. You know, there'll be a haul route, and there's going to be a driver that gets off from it for whatever mistake, and he's going to run over your rose bush. It's just going to happen.
Better not.
But if we understand human nature and we apply some common sense to human nature, what we can do is we can put in a process that can hopefully alleviate those things that happen. So let's begin with that first. I know it won't be perfect. As best as we try and do it, it's not going to be perfect, and people are going to mess up. So what we do is we have a claim process, and we require that they have insurance, and a 24-hour process by which you can do it. If they run over your rose bushes, you call this hotline, and here's the process by which it goes through. Okay? So I want to begin with that it won't be perfect. If you think I'm going to provide something perfect, then y'all need to hire somebody different, because I'm not perfect. Love to turn this into wine, but it ain't going to happen today, right? So the second thing is, can someone use your land without your permission? And I'm kind of hitting these things as they come up. The answer is no. It's your land, you own it. If someone's on there and they don't have permission, call the sheriff, okay? And if it's NextEra and they're on your land, call the sheriff. Although I will say, we have a hotline for them as well. Probably give them a call and go, hey, your guy's driving through my rose bushes, you know, to try and handle things without having the sheriff out. Now, who provides that insurance and who provides that hotline? What we have proposed, and I suspect they will accept, because this company has accepted this in other counties, is they will pay for that insurance to make sure that's in place. They will make sure and pay for the hotline by which you can make a claim. Okay? Now, with regards to the roads, remember, we're going to hire an engineering firm that part of their scope of work is going to be, they're going to look at the haul route and see if those roads can take that weight, and if not, what it takes to improve them. We're going to ask, and I suspect NextEra will approve, to assume the cost to improve those roads up to a level where they can take that weight in those turn radii. Because these things are long, they have big turns, so it's not just a weight issue, it's also, are you going to knock down 50 trees when you turn around, right? That's what their job is. Their scope of work is to tell us how those roads need to be improved and the cost to improve them, and we would ask NextEra to pay for that. Obviously, they haven't agreed to that yet. I suspect they will agree to it. We also have an ongoing inspection program so that the roads don't degrade over the life of the project. Okay, whatever that life of the project is. Remember, there's a begin date and an end date, right? To where that road continues to be maintained at the cost of NextEra to the extent they are using it. Also, there's a claims process by which if the road is harmed or the bridge is harmed by something NextEra does, the county also has a claims process they can go through to get the county's roads fixed. With regards to the professional fees, my fee, the engineering fee, and things of that nature, any expense that the county is taking on that's special to this exercise, we've asked that NextEra reimburse them for it. I don't know for sure. I suspect they will do that. I'm sure they're going to want to put a cap on my fees so I don't just go crazy, and y'all should want that as well, right? And that's fine. I don't think anyone wants to get paid more than the work they put in. With regard to taxes, the law is not the same as it was before. Before, there was an absolute exemption for these types of projects, and now it's just for the first 10 years. So that law has changed. Now, what we are proposing is what's called a pilot. That's a payment in lieu of a tax that says, hey, we believe you should pay us taxes, right? But the amount of that's a bit uncertain, so we want to agree upon a number and have that number increase based upon some rate, some constant factor for the life of this project. And this payment's made on this day every year, or quarterly, or semi-annually. So we're proposing that, no, you're not going to pay property taxes, even though we think you should, beginning in year 11. We want you to go ahead and pay us from the beginning a certain amount of money over the life of the project. And that certain amount of money is what we owe them. They're actually waiting on us to give them that figure. We haven't finished our calculations. And also the factor of how much it increases. Now, you can go one or two ways with that. One is a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes. And that will give the commissioners control of that money and allow them to divvy it out kind of within their discretion. That's sometimes a better method to go, because a property tax can end up with disproportionate money going, so it's not evenly spread, especially to school districts and things of that nature. But once again, that's going to be something you can look at. You'll be able to look at the dollar amount, you'll be able to look at how much we're proposing to increase it, and you should give public comment on it. I answered a lot of questions. Did I catch them all?
I think so, maybe.
All right.
Give me a little bit.
And that's okay, process it, and the most important thing you should take is it won't be perfect. I can promise you that.
You better not run over my rose bushes.
As for where the money's coming from, you know the $22 trillion debt the United States has?
I got
Jen.
in your opinion, like of us people here, is there anybody here who's in favor of these things? Or is it all people who are against them that keep showing up at these meetings?
But may I jump in just one moment? I need to leave here in 15 minutes. I'm not trying to stop that question, but I do want to get any questions from me, and then I gotta.
That'd be great if we can, a few more questions and we'll adjourn this meeting. Let's see, Jen posed, anybody in favor?
I get a lot of phone calls in favor. They ask me to come here and I say, it won't do any good. I mean, in my opinion, until we get the term sheet, for the most part, we get a lot of talk, but we can't really answer your questions. So I said, instead of coming now, why don't you wait till we get the term sheet, then show up. If there's 10, I don't know. Will there be 50? I don't know that either. But I've discouraged them from coming. Just for the simple, and part of it is a confrontation. I feel like that's what it'll end up being, is a confrontation. Now, once we get in the open public meeting, if it does, I guess we'll lead that whichever way it goes. But I have discouraged them from coming.
Well, it just seems to me that the non-participating people are taking time out of their business and their work and their chores and everything to come here, whereas the people who are going to benefit with the money and the tax-free, they're home. They're doing what they want to do. And I'm hoping that will bear something on you guys.
But Jenny, do they have any clauses in their contract where they can say anything if it was here?
I don't know. I haven't seen a contract.
You know, I hear that, you know, once they sign their contract, they've got a deal that, listen, they're not supposed to talk to that with their neighbors and so on and so forth. So, you know, they kind of better off to stay away. But yes, and I get a lot of calls for people that are for it. Not only from rural owners, but from a lot of people in the city of Seneca.
How many of those people out in the country that are for it want one put beside their house? Or are they signing up land that's not right by where they live? I mean,
we have not, until we get the footprint.
You know, it makes a difference. If I had land that was out in the middle of Timbuktu and it didn't affect me, and they were saying, wow, we can offer you all this money. Well, you know, you'd think, well, that sounds pretty good. But how about the people who live around there where they're signing it up? That might be your livelihood, your living.
I understand.
This general term of, I get a lot. I'm sorry, a lot to me can be anywhere from 5 people to 300 people have called you. So you know.
I haven't logged it, but I'll guarantee you one thing, the last 6 weeks, my phone don't stop ringing.
Okay, well,
and that's fine. I can take it. I'm a big fella. But if I'm going to sit and log that now.
No, I'm not saying before, against or before, but I just mean when people say the word a lot, I'm sitting there going, okay, so you've got 20 people that have called you, you've got 400 people that have called. You know, I'm not wanting you to log it. I'm just saying that's such a general term that it's like, aren't there more people that are out there that are saying, yes, this is a good thing, and we're not hearing their viewpoint as to, you know, and I'm not wanting to confront anyone. That is the last thing I want to do because it's their own decision. But when I'm hearing someone go, I get a lot. Well, I'm left to not know if that's 5 people.
Like I said, we don't log, so I guess.
I know.
I get just as many, I'll guarantee you.
You get quite a few.
Yes, emails, you name it.
Okay.
And it's both sides.
Okay.
Both sides.
And,
that's how they're getting their voice heard too.
Very good.
Like I said, most of them that called me want to come. And I said, well, we'll get a group together and come. And I said,
very, very good. I'm glad, Mr. Burdick, that you're saying both sides, because from what you said, it was like you're getting a lot of calls of people who are for this, but you had not said, I've gotten a lot of calls.
No, I'll get them on both sides of it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there any other legal type questions from anyone in the room we can direct to Mr. Neeld specifically before he goes?
So, let's say the county scenario, we all vote against it, just say. What repercussions happen if the county don't want it at all?
Yeah, I'm not sure I want to look in that crystal ball quite yet, but it would be costly
to the county.
To the county, if we wanted to flat out say no and take it to the mat. You know, there's some theories that can work, but it would be costly. So I believe I'll leave it at that.
But why? why would it be costly if we say no and they go away?
Because they sue us.
Because they're already here.
No, that's not necessarily it. So if the windmill you put up, you didn't have to get approval, you put it up, right? They can do the same thing. If they get an agreement with, say, I own land in Nemaha, and they wanted to put it up on my land, not a law in the books that says they can't do that, right? The only regulatory power the county has is a general power of protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens. Now, if you send me or some other attorney, a county attorney, or a different law firm into court to fight that, that is going to be a difficult fight. And a lot of that is because of we Americans love our freedom. Everybody in here wants to be able to build what they want to build on their land. Well, if you want to enter into a contract to have someone else build something on your land, you don't want the government in your way. Okay? That's the common sense answer. I can give you a lot of legal answers around that, but that'll be a difficult thing to challenge. And it would have to revolve around what are the dangers with this and why am I wanting to stop it to protect the health, safety, and welfare of my citizens. And I know the gentleman, he may have stepped out or I might just be forgetting his face, says that it's common knowledge that wind farms are dangerous. I don't agree with that assessment from a legal standpoint. I'm not dissuading anyone from having that opinion. And in fact, if you have that opinion, you should present it. But I don't believe that's strong enough science yet to where that's a winner for me in court. A different firm may give you different advice, but that's where I'm at right now. And, you know, if you fight and you lose, you pay someone a lot of money and you don't get a deal that protects people as best you can, right? If you cut a deal now, and cut a deal sounds like it's under the table, I don't mean it to sound that way. If you enter into a contractual agreement with NextEra, you can define the box that they're in. Now, if you were here the first time I introduced myself, one of my opinions that I've given to the commissioners and that I hope that they would adopt is that we pass legislation based upon what we're doing with NextEra. NextEra is a very good company to deal with, to cut a business deal, to enter into a contract with, and then use that as a footprint to pass legislation so that when another company wants to come in, you can properly regulate it, and you have a better chance if you want to stop it altogether. Does that make sense, what I said? So, yes, sir.
I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
Sorry.
So what I'm hearing is if the county would have done this a long time ago and put like commercial zoning restrictions on like Jackson County does, we would have been protected. Is that correct?
You would have been able to regulate pursuant to whatever statute you put in place. And listen, there are counties with zoning regulations that have been on the books forever and they never contemplated wind farms. Yeah, so
and solar's coming next.
Yeah, and fill in the blank. Right? It's hard to. The law typically trails behind technology. Right. It just does, and especially when you get into the more rural counties, it will trail even.
But
further.
if you just listed it as commercial, like her windmill, to me would not be considered commercial. Can you not restrict that as commercial without listing solar and windmills and?
Sure. Yeah, you can draft legislation, much like this term sheet I'm coming up with. I view it as something that, at least in my mind, I believe is reasonable to put to the public. You guys may say no, that's okay, or you might disagree with it. But I would think the public, along with the commissioners, can come up with a common sense approach to commercial zoning. Now, if that came up in the county where I grew up, they'd say no, no matter what, because they just don't want it. They just
well,
don't want
my
it.
opinion is it's protecting the farmer as well.
And the non-participating farmers.
Yeah, and because they could have a hog confinement come in right beside their home, and they're going to be ones screaming, like we are with the windmills.
Yeah.
So it's protecting everybody as far as commercial.
Well, and ultimately the answer to your question is yes, legislation can be passed. Whether the public wants that and whether the commissioners vote on it is outside of my rule.
Just real quick, back to the term sheet. You said a minute ago, and you're right, that technology outpaces the law. Mm-hmm. We already know that turbines, that size is important, that the taller harvest better wind, better quality wind, more of it. Will your setbacks in the term sheet be based on a percentage of height of turbines, or will it be a numerical value?
I like pure objective numbers. Here's a number. And that's my personal approach to things. Although I also set a limitation on the height of the
Okay,
wind.
so you capped something to tie the two together? Okay.
Because that's very important, because I know in the Osho County, they're putting in turbines, their intent there is 607 feet, I believe, and there are some going in Iowa right now that are 810 feet.
Yeah, I've requested a cap on the size so that it makes sense in light of the setback. And that's my methodology. I don't like formulas. I just like hard numbers, and you're either good or you're bad. Maybe I'm simple that way.
It doesn't take a complicated formula. Would it be easier to enforce a simple formula, X times height, than it would be restricting height?
Nope.
It would not?
No.
I'll trust your judgment.
You should on that.
And the train ride, excuse me.
Yeah, because the bottom line is if I make it a formula, it's open to whatever interpretation, and a smart lawyer will make it vague when it's probably not, and it's common sense to you and I. If it's a number, it's just a tape measure, and either it fits it or it doesn't. And that's why I try to make it so simple that there's no possible dispute on it. Now, I said that too flippantly. A formula has worked and can work. I'm the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. I just try to use one set number.
I like that approach. It limits, because I don't like the latitude that is written in the contract, that they can use whatever they want.
Yeah.
Whatever means they see fit to harvest wind.
Yeah, and by the way, also understand this is our initial proposal. There will be negotiation, and it won't come out exactly the way I'm projecting it. But it'll get to a point where it's ready to be presented. And the idea is to push it as close to a point where it's presentable as not. And also not have a bunch of people in the room telling me what number I should use. Get it to a point for debate.
If you have enough support, can it come out exactly how you're projecting it?
Yeah, I don't know. That's too much crystal ball for me. I just don't.
Are you familiar with any wind farms that have been, as far along as this one is, that have been challenged and stopped?
No.
Legally?
No. But, you know, most of the times, if it's going to die, it won't die in court, and nor will it go to conclusion in court. Usually those things reach some form of settlement. So I have no knowledge of a court case that has killed one.
There was one in eastern Iowa where they started putting wind farms out, or the turbines up, and they had to take them down.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that case?
No, I'm not.
Those went up in violation of existing regulation, no.
No.
How are you arriving at the distance for setback? How are you deciding that, especially for non-participating farmers?
Yeah, so what certainly we took, or I took, the process we took, I began with a survey of what I've seen in other states and in this state. Right? I was also here for some public comment, and then I made a proposal to the commissioners and county attorney. We had a meeting, it was a meeting before the one right after Christmas, and then we changed that number based upon the input from the commissioners, and I pushed it out. So.
Hey, one or two more. Mr. Neeld's got to go.
You questioned my
one or two questions
on
more.
The health or the effects of the windmills. I've gotten all my information from a scientist from North Carolina, Dr. John Droz.
Mm-hmm.
He is one of 10,000 people that have studied the effects of windmills, and 700 of those are with PhDs, so they're very knowledgeable people. And there's countless studies out there that shows the effects of windmills and the health. And so I challenge you all to go to that website, wiseenergy.org, and read that. They back up everything I'm saying.
Sure. And I should clarify that. I am not smart enough to be able to know one way or the other. What I do know is whether a court has determined legally, from a liability standpoint for the county, whether that's a health and safety issue for a county regulatory thing. Certainly someone with a PhD is going to be smarter on that than I am. So wanted to clarify that. Don't take offense to it. Give me the legal analysis, not my personal analysis.
I just wanted to clarify that.
You bet.
That I am backing it up with facts from credible people.
Sure, absolutely.
That was excuse me, that was wiseenergy.com?
Wiseenergy.org.
.org, okay.
Yes.
Maybe
Anything else, excuse me?
No, I was gonna say maybe one more, then I gotta.
There's one out there, last one for Mr. Neeld.
Hey, I'm Dylan Kahn, and I'm a business owner outside the city limits of Seneca. But I had more of a legal question, and then another question for the board here. Legal question side, have you advised the commissioners on the costs that could be associated with potential lawsuits from the citizens of Nemaha County for not protecting their health rights? And then also, with that, have you advised them on what is acceptable by law to look into these things? And has the county hired anybody to look into the health risks and do research to advise our commissioners? So that way, when they do decide, they are able to make an educated vote on it and know that they've done their due diligence in good faith to the citizens.
Sure. As far as the general legal advice, yes. As far as hiring an expert with regards to, for example, the studies and stuff, no, I don't think so. Not to my knowledge, anyway.
Okay. I mean, I guess this would be to the commissioners. I mean, that would be something I think be worth looking into, is hiring someone to do the research to present it to you before you make a choice on it. It seems, I've just probably within the last week started catching wind of what was going on here and looking back on YouTube and watching the videos, but it seems like we're afraid of a large corporation because of the money they have and potential litigation and what it could possibly cost the county. But I think the county also needs to look at is what it would cost them if it goes the other way, because you guys are in a rock and a hard spot right here. And there's no win for you right now where you're sitting, but your citizens also have the right, and it will cost you a lot because it does affect my business. It would affect it greatly. And the other businesses we've talked about, Heinen Brothers, well, I do a lot of business with Heinen Brothers, so if they have issues and move away, that affects me greatly, let alone having a windmill right behind my property. So that would force litigation or a class action lawsuit, naming the county and or NextEra, which, as we all know, the only people that win in lawsuits are attorneys, so I've had my fair share of litigations. I've been in a lawsuit for 3 years. I've spent $70,000 in attorney fees, so I understand what's about ready to come down the road, but also to make yourself aware of, which I hope your attorney you hired lets you know too, is with building and maintenance and with the roads, with large corporations. Now, he's been on the other side, so he knows exactly what I'm talking about. When they go through the roads and tear them up, if they feel like they don't have to do it, it's sometimes in their best interest to hire their attorneys that are already paid to spend years to fight it, versus go ahead and take care of it, even though your engineering firm says, hey, yeah, you should do this. Sometimes that's the best route. And so we get into this partnership with them, we could be looking at litigation throughout the whole entire time as the process goes. It's not like a one-time deal, because sometimes that is the best thing in business, is to take it into court and force these things, even though you know you're wrong. Sometimes that is the best avenue, financially speaking. These are things all to be thinking about, and I think maybe we should hire someone to look at actually the health effects, so you guys do your due diligence, so you can look at us in the face maybe down the road if we're having issues, if it is an issue. And that way you guys save face, and you can say, we did our due diligence. We know that the setback at 1,400 feet is safe, it's okay, or 2 miles or whatever. You guys want to figure out here, that way we all get it all out on the table and we know exactly what's what, because there is some unknowns. There's always going to be unknowns when you do projects, but if you don't do your due diligence and hop into something, especially something this big, because essentially we're partnering with them. We're becoming a partner with NextEra. We're allowing them to use our resource, be a part of our community, and so we want to know who we're partnering with and what kind of partners we have, and how they will treat us and handle us. So I think some research there might be worth looking into. I often thought about it, we're gonna get into litigation. And if the county decides, as a whole, the people, that they want NextEra, I'm fine with raising the sales tax 1%. We can handle and afford attorneys, so don't think there's not any funds for the county to handle something like that, because, we'll take it all together, because we live together, so we'll handle that. We had no problem with 0.5% with our hospitals. And I don't think people realize how much money that brings in. You guys probably get to see the reports, but it's quite a bit. So I see it every day. I mean, my typical invoice is $700 to $1,000. So I see how much that is, and if you guys have ever visited me, you know too. So we've talked about it. I'll keep Uncle Sam, but that was the things I wanted to bring forward. So there is concerns. It's not just farmers out in the country. I own 3 businesses in the county, so. And some of those do rely on other businesses around. So I'm kind of in a hard spot too, because I have a lot of farmers that this would be beneficial, which I hope they'd come and see me and buy some tires. But, I've been accused of throwing nails out there too, and these guys got lots of tires coming in here. So it's a win-win for me, but I want to make sure my family's health and welfare is taken care of, because more than likely I'll have one right behind me too. And so I've thought, as a father, is it worth paying, you guys are, I don't think you even figured out an amount, but if it's $1 million a year in lieu of taxes, right? Well, I figured it out with the citizen. I pay $100 every year in property taxes to not have that windmill behind me. I'd do it. Would it be worth $10 a month or less than $10 a month? You bet. I cancel Netflix. So I just hope we, as commissioners, you guys really dig deep into the health and safety aspect, because I think that's where a lot of this concern comes from with the citizens. It's the unknown. And so if we have someone that literally can tell us, okay, a mile out, you're going to have these issues. 500 feet out, and that way they can feel more comfortable. I can feel more comfortable, and you can feel comfortable that you know that you did your job. And then there's no more unknown, and now we can come to a contract and say, okay, this is the red line, X amount of feet. Anything closer than that, it's going to concern our citizens with their health and welfare. So anything outside of that, we're fine with it, so on and so forth. So I think that's where a lot of this comes from. And you're going to find a lot more people are going to start to get that information. Like I said, I just came by it with a week ago, happened to see it on Facebook, and thought, I'll look at it. And then next thing I know, it's been 2 hours. And I may go back a little bit more. Now we've looked at everyone since November. So, and I would have concern because they changed the footprint on you. I did see that. You guys' jaws just about hit the desk when you saw that new footprint, and he just laid it out there for you. So how good have they been in good faith? Something to think about there too. How they been acting in good faith. So just don't think about dollars.
Okay.
That's all I got to say. So.
Thank you, Dylan. Anything else, Tim or Dennis, right offhand for Mr. Neeld or Brad? Okay. Well, and let's make a date for the 14th. Pending your approval, of course.
That works for me, sure.
Okay, we do have to swear in you and the new magistrate judge.
Well, next week you're going to swear me in?
Yeah.
Gee, what if I don't come?
So
You're off the hook.
So we can do it right after that.
Okay, but that just takes a minute.
Right, let's just take a few minutes.
So Gary, I know, as Dennis said, there's people beyond, and Tim said, beyond this room that are interested. Can you define a time that will be next week, roughly?
I said we use the same process we used here, 9 to 10 executive session, 10 to whenever the open session.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah, is that okay with, and the process that you have, Galen? I mean, I talked to you last night and I didn't know for sure.
Right, well,
wasn't.
people are trying, as someone said, they're taking time away from their work and their jobs, and they're willing to do it, but they don't want to sit in the hall for an hour.
Right.
So
Well, let's just maintain this same format. Mr. Neeld, we'll start with him at 9. Assume that we'll speak with him for an hour. At that point in time, we'll open the door and go from there. Plan on that unless you folks hear differently. Excuse me, differently.
Can we reserve the courtrooms?
Well, depending on the guy wearing the robe, but yes, we'll if that warrants, for sure, we'll try to get down there, but it depends on what's going on there.
Can you serve drinks and maybe brew?
Well,
Kool-Aid.
Save that for later, maybe.
Only if you bring it.
Thank you.
Did I say that?
See you next week.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Well, and Gary, just to clarify.
Excuse me.
Wind discussion over for today, everything's moving.
I would say so. We kind of got to attend to some other county business that Mary Kay's
I know there's some department heads that.
encouraging.
So that's why.
I'd like to go on record if I can. The 2016 8 resolution did not refer to setbacks or health and welfare hardly at all. And that's really what's concerning everybody.
Yes, it is.
Actually, it was the 2012.
We are here to help you try to solve those issues.
We need to keep the county healthy so they'll stay here, so they'll keep paying taxes.
That's right.
I might note, the first reference, I maybe missed something else, but the first reference I've seen to that term, the health, safety, and well-being of Nemaha County, was used by NextEra in stating adamantly that 2012 did not protect the health, safety, and well-being of Nemaha County.
That's exactly right.
And I find that very ironic, that is the underlying topic, the primary topic for most of us. And that verbiage came from NextEra in rescinding 2012.
It hasn't been a fun ride, has it?
Do you need to get
I've got to stand up or I'm gonna start stretching some bones out or I'm gonna. Excuse me.
Well, just a minute, I'll go get your walker.
Yeah.
I can get, as long as I got something to lean on.
Thank you.
In here somewhere. We're in here when we come. Do these chairs just go around?
Where do these chairs go?
We'll get them, Kathy. We'll get them. Get,
Otherwise you can put them in the hall.
Okay.
Thank you.
thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you, thanks.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks for coming.
Exactly.
If you don't mind, guys, I just wanted to give you a handout on some of the setbacks that are around the country. I did. Just so, I think there's